I find even if you're not here live, the conversations are really sometimes nice to listen to. So is there anything to share from the experiences of the past month? It's been a month now since we first sat together. I know Nico has, and let's ask everybody except Nico first, and then Nico will awaken all of your insights like he does. Or we just let Nico talk and he'll wake you up. Okay, Nico.
No.
So we did
more
our
to
mind. Go ahead.
I have nothing more to say. Like, it has been amazing for me how I do this practice and what it offers me.
So more specific, what in particular?
At first I got kind of, I told you, if I thought I couldn't bring, I could start getting a little bit stressed, and that would give me headaches. Mm-hmm. But that kind of really slowly left me. Mm-hmm. And now, like 4 weeks later, I see that I have I have created a much bigger understanding of how I can just breathe even with a blocked nose. Mm-hmm. And it was a great insight of it connected me a lot to the breath, in a sense that I am much more quiet and I have much more trust in what is happening. Like I can explode with trust and not get panic stricken if I feel that like something doesn't flow really well. You know, it was more of a mind game than a reality. Yeah. So I'm really indebted to you about that, because giving me these exercises, it really changed my perception, and it has given me a better sense. And also doing them before my yoga practice, it has it kind of doesn't allow me to do my yoga practice faster. It sets a very good pace. And even if I could earlier manage to do the whole sequence in an hour and 25 minutes, somehow now it doesn't allow this to happen. It's always very calm because it has been set before the asana starts. So that also has given me a great sense of the asana work. Mm-hmm.
And you made a great observation too when you said the words, you said, and then I do my yoga practice. And that was a point that I think is really important to note it. So what we've been doing in the past month is I've given you tools, right? And you work with the tools and you figure out how these tools are useful for your practice. And so that at that point, you know, as we begin this process, it's really the beginning of two qualities of the Yoga Sutras talk about for a practice with it, which is abhyasa and vairagya. So a trust in this process and some way of returning to yourself regularly, whether it's every day, doesn't have to be every day, but in some way returning, whether that's asana practice or something else. So this is another tool or a set of tools to return, whether it's, you know, just simply touching the fingers can be very powerful, following the breath, or using the sequence of breathing like we did, using the techniques with the nose. So this is all to set the foundation to start, like, and Nico shared some really important observations of his own experience, that he was having an emotional reaction to his breathing. So, you know, fear is not just in the head, as you know, fear is really in the muscles, the nervous system, you know, the whole body. And if a breathing practice can awaken an awareness of that without overloading the system, then it can be a really valuable place to work. That's good. Nico always has great insights. I like to listen. Any other thoughts or observations about yourself or anything that we've done? Mia had mentioned that she found this first exercise of touching the fingers really beneficial. And
yeah, I was losing track of my fingers. I was enjoying the breathing so much, and then I just kept going.
Oh, good.
Doing more and more, and yeah, and I found my congestion is always one-sided, so that was
okay.
big to find as well. So.
Excellent. And that's a good returning, because it is a form of meditation. So I'm piling on more and more, because this is fundamentally a process for preparing your mind. So the more practiced you are with one pointed attention, the easier all of the processes can be to maintain for a period of time. And then sometimes the thought comes in and you've lost, which is it, right or left, or is it, where was I? So we can build on that, and we can also reinforce what we've been doing. And so what I sent you was just a couple of thoughts and musings I had on why and how we use mantra is part of our pranayama practice. So those of you who've done some workshops with me, I will often in workshops use chanting in asana as a form of holding the breath in a particular direction. And so we have the 8 limbs in Ashtanga Yoga, the first 4, yama, niyama, and asana, and pranayama. So this was a way that my teacher, Gary Kraftsa, was breaking down a way to think about these aspects of the practice. So Ashtanga Yoga is a methodology or a set of activities laid out in several texts, but I'll focus on the Yoga Sutras. And it's part of a larger practice called Kriya Yoga. So Kriya Yoga is the focus of the 2nd chapter of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And so there's 4 books in these collection of sutras. And each of these books was written for a different student at a different state in their path. So the first chapter was intended for a student who has freed themselves of their habitual living, has a clear mind, and can be given instruction and go. The 2nd chapter is more for people like me, the people who still get stuck in habitual things. You know, chocolate is very nice, sometimes a glass of wine, and, you know, these habitual things. Sometimes I get nervous still, you know, I'm still in this very much human process. And the 2nd chapter lays out yoga for dummies, maybe. That's a good way to think of it. So Kriya Yoga is a 3-fold way of thinking about yoga practice. The practice of being present, which is what Penny's noticing with losing track of things. When we drift, it's hard to pay attention. Reflecting on the self or the context of our lives. And then also acknowledging that there are many things beyond ourselves. And these 3 aspects are the foundation of yoga, of action. And in that method is Ashtanga Yoga. And Ashtanga Yoga is particularly a set of activities for cultivating discriminant awareness. So cultivating the state of mind to be able to see what is and what is not. And so the Ashtanga Yoga lists 8 activities that can be thought of as each a kind of relationship. So in the tradition that I've practiced in, one of the main teachers, Mr. Desikachar, would say that yoga is relationship. And so often a lot of the teachings that we receive in this tradition, we kind of think of things in that context. So the yamas and niyamas, sort of the ethical foundations of this practice of yoga, have to do with our relationships to the world around us and to ourselves. Asana, the physical practice, relationship with the physical body. Pranayama, relationship with the breath, life energy of the body. So those are the 4 steps. Those are the bahiranga, which is the external limbs of this methodology. So pranayama is the last of this set of practices or activities that have to do with the external. And it's a transition point to the internal practices, beginning with something called pratyahara, which is, you can think of it as a relationship with the sensory experience of this human condition. And there are particular practices that you can work with. The image they give is that each of your senses has a food that it's drawn to. So your ears are drawn to sound, your nose is drawn to smells. And so there are practices to sort of turn these sensory experience more inward. So instead of the energy looking to absorb the world around you, you're sort of looking to absorb the world within you. And so this pranayama, pratyahara are very close cousins in this tradition. The last three angas, the last three are different levels of relationships with your attention. And so that's why the pranayama is really developing your attention to get you ready for that deeper inner experience. So the way that we'll introduce mantra to be used with pranayama is to think about this experience of pratyahara, of taking the attention within. Because mantra is not just sound, not just chanting, it's also meaning. Even if we chant it in a foreign language, in some level there's a meaning. If we chant it in our native language, it sometimes feels quite silly to chant some of these chants we like to chant in yoga. But there is, they say there's a vibrational level. I tend to be quite a skeptic with some of these teachings of yoga, but I like the vibration as well. So there's a vibrational aspect. We're resonating within the body. And then there's a meaning. If we're focusing all of our attention and all of our energy on the concept of love or peace, what does that do to us as a yogi? Chapter 3 of the Yoga Sutras goes into that a little bit. It's what arises within us. But pratyahara is presented in the sutras not only as a practice, a set of practices that you can do. It may also be something that arises itself from practice. So if you've ever had the experience of focusing on anything that you're really dedicated to, it doesn't have to be something on the mat. For me, for example, if I'm reading something I'm very interested in, I can't hear. I stop hearing. And I had to explain this to my husband, who thought I was just ignoring him. I wasn't ignoring him. I didn't hear him. It's my excuse anyway. But really, that shuts down. When you're really interested in something, there's an experience of shutting down, maybe even a feeling of timelessness, where the senses are really what connect us to this temporal experience of living. And so in the practice of pranayama, we're going to use a mantra to sort of activate and begin to touch upon this experience of pratyahara. And like I was saying to Mia, even these experiences of touching the fingers are part of the classical pranayama teachings that I found really inspiring when I started reading the Yoga Yajnavalkya and Yoga Rahasya, some writings also by Krishnamacharya, which are claimed to have more divine inspiration, but they're essentially a discussion and a breakdown of teachings of Ashtanga Yoga. And in the teachings of pranayama, it was really beautiful to read of a particular mudra. And the one sutra said something like, when you master these breath techniques of pranayama, or you practice this mudra, you will become a master of the life energy of the prana. So there's this interconnection of this experience of the senses and the breathing that fit together nice. So the intention for the tool for today was to just give you one practice that integrates that concept, and also looking at a different way of breathing. So last week we talked a little bit about these ratios. So how long the inhale is compared to the exhale, compared to the hold between inhale and exhale. And Magda had raised a good question, and I know she'll listen to this, so I'll address it here. She had said she noticed that she feels like she could increase the length of the hold after inhale. Feels like her body would feel quite comfortable doing that a little bit longer. And so I asked her to see how it feels instead to maintain the ratio and find a way to expand the breath more before that hold begins. Because this working with a particular ratio, so disciplining the body and the mind to follow a particular rhythm of breathing has a particular energetic effect for the system. So in the handout I gave you, I give a quote from one of Gary's books on yoga for transformation about the energizing kinds of breath. Energizing practices, Brahmana practices, tend to be nourishing, energetic for the body, tend to be a little more fast, a little more loud, a little more oriented towards the inhale side of the breath, compared to what's called Langana practices. And Langana practices are more cleansing, more cooling, a little bit slower, not necessarily more gentle, because they can also be very purifying, but they focus a little more on the exhale side of breath. You can think of the body. It's so often yoga asana that facilitate a deeper exhale. So these are sort of the energetic balances we bring when we look at the 4 parts of the breath. So we're going to work with a breath ratio that has the same length of inhale, hold after inhale, exhale, and hold after exhale. So the 4 parts of the breath are equal. Since most of you who shared what you were finding in your natural rhythm, the exhale is a little bit longer. So now we elevate the inhale to the same level as exhale. And that has an effect of being a bit more stimulating for most people. If your natural rhythm is the opposite, if your inhale is naturally longer than exhale, then it will have more of a Langana effect on you. So some of you have noticed sort of a relaxed sensation connecting with the breath. And I want you to keep an awareness of that sensation, because the whole month has been really supporting and nurturing what you already do with your breath. So it's the figuring out the capacity at what you are already, and staying there and honoring the sensations in the body that arise when you work at the level where you are. And so with these practices, as we start to alter it, we want to work to try to stay in that state of grace. So as Nico mentioned, there's some irritation that arises, some fear that sometimes arises at certain edges of the breath. We can watch that arise and stay as much as possible in that state of ease without going over. And this is the faith we have in practice, that with time, things may shift, or they may not. But you stay within that state of grace. And that's when it becomes practice. That's when it changes from being a technique to being a tool of your own practice. So the tool that I want to use is just a simple set of 7 sounds. And I actually have it here. Let's see. Maybe. Oh, it's not set up. Okay, I can't share it. So I sent a picture that looks like this. It's my little man with 7 sounds. I'm going to be doing a bit of chanting here, so I need a drink. So first, we can go through these 7 sounds. And since we have shorter times together, I'm much nicer to you guys, because I don't let people read this until after we do the practice, and you have to learn it. So the sounds themselves are connected with these chakra points that we spoke of last week when talking about Nadi Shodhana. So these intersecting points of the 3 large nadis running through the center of the body through this model. And there's a seed sound that goes with each of them. So we'll go through it. You can leave your microphone on or off. It's not a big deal. We'll just go through the sounds once. And then to do the pranayama practice, I'll do the chanting. So you're going to just follow in your mind. And when you practice this at home, you don't have to practice aloud. You practice in your own mind. Because trick about chanting, you can only do it on exhale. So we're going to practice in 4 parts of the breath. When you practice mantra, as you all know, when you practice it internally, it's a different experience than chanting just out loud. So we're going to use these sounds in all 4 parts of the breath, but I want you just to hear them once and to feel the association with certain points in the body. Because at the deeper level, so Penny, as we feel more comfortable with keeping track, more comfortable with technique, more comfortable with the words in this mantra that are new, more comfortable with where each of these points in the body are represented by these sounds, you have now your mind is very present, integrating all of them into a practice. So I'll back up a little bit here so you can see sort of the whole body. Okay, and we can do it together. So the first one is at the root chakra, so at the very base of the body. And we'll chant. When we chant, try to match something like the length of the sound and the pitch that I make, just to follow tradition here. So we're going to inhale, open the arms. As we exhale, we're going to make the sound lam. Lam. Hands come up, second chakra. Inhale, open. Vam. Third chakra. Inhale. Ram. Fourth chakra, region of the heart. Inhale. Yam. The throat. Inhale. Ham. Third eye. Inhale. Crown of the head open. And just to give you a flavor as the breath grows, this is something we did, Olga, in our class many times. You inhale, and on one exhale, lam, bam, ram, yam, ham, am, om. So you build up the breath just using a sound. This is the ancient metronome, one of many. So many different ways to represent these sounds. This is one of them. So we're going to use this to keep the attention on the length of each part of the breath. I think Nico remembers doing the sounds in Vinyasa in the Kriya Yoga workshop. That's something to try when you do your opening sequence. 4-part breathing with this. Okay, so I gave you a square. This square just maps out the practice. So inhale is the horizontal line above, exhale, horizontal line below. The holding is the vertical lines. So we begin in the center of this circle. We'll have one sound through inhale. Hold the inhale for the sound again. Exhale the length of the sound. Inhale, holding the length of the sound. Each breath, we're adding one of these bijas, one of these seed sounds. So I'll guide the first time we do it together. And if we make it to all 7 sounds, first of all, if you don't make it to all 7 sounds, don't worry, this can be quite a strong practice. You can cheat, and you're allowed to cheat. All of you can cheat. The way you cheat is by chanting faster. But the first one we'll do together. I'm going to guide it, so you can't cheat quite as much. Well, you can because you're all at home and I can't hear you, and that's fine. So what you do is you begin with one sound. Each breath you add a sound until you have 7 sounds. So now, however long it takes to recite those 7 sounds in your mind is the length of each part of the breath. And then you come back from 7 to 6 to 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. And you bring the breath to follow the sound or follow the mantra that's in your mind. So I'm going to make these sounds out loud. You follow the sounds in your own head. You don't have to learn them in this moment. You can just listen to me and follow. So each time you inhale, I'm going to add a sound. So I'm going to say a sound 4 times. The first time I say the sound, you're going to inhale. And you're going to match the rate of my chanting with your inhale. So it's going to be very short at first. And it's going to build. And you might find your edges there, or you might find it's very comfortable to do all 7. Okay. Does that sound okay? And Penny, watch this one, that it doesn't irritate, okay? So I would suggest doing it either with just Ujjayi or just an open throat. So no Nadi Shodhana for now, just to make it simple. So before we begin, exhale everything out, empty out. When I make sound, you begin the inhale. Lam. Pause. Lam. Exhale. Lam. Pause. Lam. Lam. Vam. Pause. Lam. Vam. Exhale. Lam. Vam. Pause. Lam. Vam. Lam. Vam. Ram. 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 Yam. 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 Ham. 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 Lam. Vam. Ram. Ham. Am. Lam. Vam. Ram. Yam. 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 Ham. Am. Om. 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 Lam. Vam. Ram. Yam. Ham. Am. Lam. Ram. Ram. Yam. Ham. Am. Lam. Vam. Ram. Yam. Ham. Am. Lam. Vam. Ram. Yam. Ham. Am. Lam. Vam. Ram. Yam. Ham. 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 Lam. Vam. Ram. Yam. Lam. Vam. Ram. Yam. Lam. Vam. Ram. Yam. Lam. Vam. Ram. Yam. Lam. Vam. Ram. Lam. Vam. Ram. lam vam ram, lam vam ram, lam vam, lam vam, lam vam, lam vam, lam, 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 lam. Notice the contrast between sound and silence. Notice the impact on your system. So this was 7 breaths up and 7 breaths down, 14 breaths with the same sort of ratio. This same practice can be done with numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, for example, and back down. But if you choose to do this kind of practice with the bija, you can also with time memorize the sounds, memorize the places in the body that these sounds are said to awaken, and it becomes the first steps into a nice pratyahara practice of waking up the chakra centers through the breath and through the focus. Are there any questions about what we did?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
How can you do this practice Nadi Shodhana? No, yeah, but do you do
What I suggest,
twice lam, vam, twice lam?
do the same thing. First, don't make it overcomplicated. Do the same thing, just use Nadi Shodhana. If you can do that without feeling agitated,
Yeah, okay.
then you can do twice. You can do right side, left side. And what's nice, as the pause gets bigger, you can release the mudra and then come back.
Uh-huh.
And that's an extra level of focus, because then you don't remember if you did left or right. But as always, like, look for the sensation of peace in the body, like, you know, that sense of fear is when the body is coming up against it. So we want to work before that comes, because we know that as we practice, things will shift. So go simple. So there's, you know, this is like 3 things. There's the sounds, where the sounds in the body are, and adding the sounds together while breathing and remembering them. Like, I messed up a couple times here, you know, but you just keep going. It all ends with you'll be fine, except that last one. And it just is a practice. It's a practice of attention, working with the breath.
I have recorded you.
Good. I have recorded me too.
So that you can sing for me while I'm breathing.
Can I do that? Is that still doing it properly if I record you and then just have you do that to me every morning?
Yes, that's
okay.
perfectly acceptable.
Okay, great.
Once I get my new computer up and running, I can cut that part and just have it as a standalone audio or video that you can use. Yes, you can always use.
Great.
You're always allowed to cheat in my yoga things. And when you don't need to cheat anymore, you'll be fine. Like Nico said, how do you practice this way? I said, never do it right. Never do it right. Just do it. And eventually something good comes out of it, usually. Was it difficult to reach all 7 at the same time in the holding or the exhale, or was it pretty comfortable? I tried to go a little faster for okay. So if you have a larger breath capacity for holding, then just make the chanting a little bit slower. So I wanted to make it a little more doable for the first time. And if you notice, so for most people, holding after inhale is quite easy. Holding after exhale can be a challenge. And if you like, next week or in 2 weeks with the practice from this, we could start earlier and have a little more time. And I thought we could do an integrated practice, which is adapting the breathing during an asana sequence to create a particular impact in the body. Misha has done this with us. Misha's not here today, but she's done this with us as well. It's a fantastic preparation for seated meditation. But it works primarily with manipulating the breath in a deeper and deeper way, and then the body starts to respond. So this could be an interesting place for you to play, Nico, in that part of the breath in a safe way. Any other thoughts or questions or comments?
Just to get that, like to get it straight, the bijas are the mantra, and we're supposed to repeat it in our heads. Yes. Is it possible to actually articulate them? Yes. Even while you're holding your breath.
Oh, you mean, well, for you to do it while you're, no. So in order to make sound, you need movement of breath. Yeah. You can chant on inhale, but it sounds very strange.
That's what I thought, yeah.
It's so traditionally, and as humans, chanting is done on exhale. So you can, for example, on the exhale part of your breath, if you like, you can chant. So chanting takes more energy because the body physically has to push the air out. So that's going to shift the practice a little bit, which is fine. But just be aware of that.
And the picture you drew, is that for visualizing the different bijas as well?
Exactly. This was drawn by my teacher's son in Assisi, Italy. When we didn't have a handout, so he drew that for us. He's a nice little artist. There are many different bija. Bija just means seed mantras. There's many different kinds of bijas. This is one set of bija mantras for these particular chakra centers. They're short, that's why I chose these ones.
Do you have an advice on how to hold breath when you to not try and like stiffen up and be like, okay, I can't, like I'm not allowed to do anything?
Well, one is practice. Practice. If you notice that, so the fact that you notice it is a really good thing, because many of us don't. If you're having a lot of tension, like in the jaw, if you tend to sort of hold the teeth together, one method I find useful is to take the tip of the tongue up against the palate. It sort of de-triggers that tendency to clench. And with shoulders, one of the ways that I have worked with a lot of people in Germany who have tight shoulders is to keep the attention a little bit lower. So one of the ways that might help is to visualize these chakra points, because there are no chakra points like up here, maybe the throat, but that's even a little bit different. And so as you practice this, if you know that's a tendency that you have in the holding, be aware of that. And what's great about this kind of practice is because it's a longer hold, it gives you more time to think, oh wait, okay. and then go on, because it's now like a 7 to maybe 10-second hold for some of you. So practice with awareness like you always do, and see what comes, and see if that shifts. For most people with practice, it begins to shift, and you'll find little tips for bringing your attention to a place that can help that go. It's just a habit.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And we'll be slowly back online live, not even online, like some people live soon, which is a nice way to think, but this is also nice. In some time in the future, we can do pranayama live. That'll be nice. So thank you, everyone. I'll be on for a minute if anybody needs to chat. I'm going to stop the recording. Bye, Magda. Bye, Misha.
Bye.